the truth be known to all of them. I'm not some big star. I'm just me.
Neil Diamond, a name once echoing through stadiums and radios around the world, is now a quiet figure in a silent studio. The voice behind Sweet Caroline can't strum a guitar anymore. His hands tremble too much. At 77, he received a diagnosis that changed everything. For 2 long years, he lived in denial. Then, almost overnight, he walked away from the spotlight. After selling 125 million albums, the man who once made crowds sing in unison now finds solace alone with his memories. His present is a far cry from the dazzling heights of his past. Born on January 24, 1941, in Brooklyn, New York, Neil Diamond came into the world during the hardships of World War II. His parents, Rose and Akiba Kiev Diamond, were Jewish immigrants who had escaped the turmoil of Russia and Poland. Life in Brooklyn was never easy. His father worked tirelessly as a dry goods merchant, doing what he could to keep the family afloat. They moved frequently, chasing stability through ever-changing neighborhoods. No matter where they went, their roots followed them, rich with Jewish tradition and the immigrant spirit. These early struggles etched themselves into Neil's soul, later surfacing in the raw honesty of his lyrics. During the war, their world turned upside down. The family relocated to Cheyenne, Wyoming, while Kiev served in the army. For a Brooklyn boy, Wyoming might as well have been another planet. Amid vast plains and dusty roads, Neil found escape in dark movie theaters, where singing cowboys captured his imagination. He was mesmerized. The grand skies, the rugged tales, the way songs could tell stories, it all planted a seed. When the war ended, they returned to Brooklyn, this time settling in Brighton Beach. But the wide-open West had already carved its place in Neil's heart. As a teenager, Neil stumbled upon his life's calling, songwriting. At just 15, he penned Hear Them Bells for a girl he liked. It wasn't just a crush, it unlocked a whole universe inside him. That summer, he attended a camp for Jewish youth upstate. There, he witnessed Pete Seeger perform, and something clicked. Seeing how simple words and melodies could carry weight and meaning hit Neil like a jolt. He rushed home, begged for a guitar, and soon was clumsily learning chords while dreaming up songs he hadn't yet written. His 16th birthday gift, a $9 acoustic guitar, may have looked humble, but to Neil, it was a passport to another world. School began to fade into the background as songwriting took over. Even in class, lyrics filled the margins of his notebooks. That guitar became his second heartbeat, proof that he wasn't cut out for a conventional life. At Erasmus Hall High School, he joined the chorus, singing next to a girl named Barbara Streisand. They weren't stars yet, just 2 voices, still finding their way. They didn't become close, but both radiated a spark the world hadn't caught onto yet. Neil later transferred to Abraham Lincoln High School, where he unexpectedly picked up fencing. There, he bonded with Herb Cohen, who later became an Olympic fencer. Music and fencing, an unusual combo, but both sharpened Neil's focus, teaching him discipline and the value of chasing a dream. In 1958, he earned a fencing scholarship to NYU. At first, he pursued medicine, trying to fulfill the dreams his parents had for him. But even in anatomy class, melodies swirled in his mind. The lecture halls couldn't compete with the pull of Tin Pan Alley. By sophomore year, he was skipping classes to pitch songs to publishers. His grades plummeted, but his creative fire only burned hotter. The pivotal moment came in 1961. Just 10 credits from graduation, Neil was offered a $50 a week songwriting deal. It was a gamble, but it felt right. He dropped out, walking away from a secure path to chase a dream no one could guarantee. His parents, especially his father, were devastated. That choice created a rift it would take years, and hits, to mend. At Sunbeam Music Publishing, Neil got a crash course in the business side of music. His job, churn out catchy songs in a cramped office for artists he'd never meet. When he tried to write from the heart, he was told it was too complicated. With every rejection, his confidence took a hit. Eventually, Sunbeam dropped him, but instead of despair, Neil felt oddly liberated. He knew now that he'd have to carve his own path, or quit entirely. Neil's journey into music was lit with promise and littered with letdowns. In 1962, he partnered with his friend Jack Packer. They called themselves Neil and Jack, recorded a few songs, but none found traction. Later that year, Neil signed a solo deal with Columbia Records. Finally, a break. In July 1963, he released Clowntown backed with At Night. Music magazines gave it praise. But the public didn't bite. The record tanked. Columbia quickly cut ties. And that's when the tough years truly began. Neil Diamond, future legend, was broke and barely scraping by. There were days when Neil Diamond survived on just 35 cents, barely enough for a bite to eat. He wrote wherever he could, on buses, in lonely rooms, and on a battered piano above a New York club called Birdland. It was a cold, hungry stretch of life, but out of that struggle, something extraordinary began to emerge. Without deadlines or expectations, his music grew deeper, more authentic. Neil would later say those were the songs that carried real emotion. That raw time gave birth to classics like Cherry and Solitary Man, songs etched with loneliness, but also resilience. Then, in November 1965, the door finally creaked open. Jay and the Americans recorded his song Sunday and Me, and for the first time, Neil tasted success. It climbed to number 18 on the Billboard charts and held on for weeks. Even in Canada, the song made waves. After years of rejection, that one victory felt like everything. It was validation, proof that Neil Diamond wasn't just another voice lost in the noise. His melodies struck chords. His lyrics stuck. Sunday and Me was more than a hit, it was a turning point. Soon after, Neil met hitmakers Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich. They'd already penned some of the biggest songs of the era, and they instantly saw the spark in Neil's demos. They helped him land another publishing deal. But like many things in Neil's early career, it didn't last. He got fired again. Neil later laughed that being fired was practically a badge of honor for songwriters. But the sting didn't stop him. Jeff and Ellie introduced him to Burt Burns, head of Bang Records. Burns saw what others had missed, a true original. He signed Neil and, for the first time, gave him the freedom to write the way he felt. No more fluff, just real, emotional songs that had been waiting inside Neil all along. Then came the song that blew the doors off everything. In 1966, publisher Don Kirshner needed a tune for a new band, the Monkees. Neil played him a song he'd written for himself, I'm a Believer. Kirshner didn't hesitate. The song was rushed to California, where the Monkees added vocals, and the result was explosive. I'm a Believer sold over 1 million copies before it even hit stores. It soared to number 1 and stayed there for 7 weeks. It was the biggest hit of 1967. Overnight, Neil Diamond went from anonymous writer to the man behind America's favorite song. He wasn't done. Neil also penned A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You and Look Out, Here Comes Tomorrow, for the Monkees, proving that I'm a Believer wasn't a fluke. It was the start of a streak. But even while writing smashes for others, Neil hadn't forgotten his own voice. In early 1966, he released Solitary Man. It didn't top the charts, but it made people pay attention. That song, about searching for love and meaning, was more than a hit. It was a mirror of Neil's own life. Honest, gritty, unforgettable. A few months later, Cherry dropped, and this one lit up the charts. It shot to number 6, a bright signal that Neil Diamond was now more than just a behind-the-scenes genius. He was stepping into the spotlight. Riding the wave, he released his first album, The Feel of Neil Diamond. It came together quickly, but even in its rush, it revealed something powerful. A songwriter who could tell personal stories with pop hooks, someone who could make people feel. Then came the moment that made him a household name. In 1969, Neil appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. The first time, it was just him on a stool, singing Sweet Caroline. With nothing but his voice and a story, he captivated millions. When he returned for his second performance, the stage was transformed. He sang Holly Holy while standing atop a giant rainbow-colored pyramid, surrounded by dancing flower children, a wild, colorful reflection of the late 60s. Sweet Caroline took off, soaring up the charts and becoming an instant classic. Holly Holy followed, not quite as high, but still a hit. Oddly, these unforgettable performances would be his only ones on the show, which was nearing its final days. For decades, fans wondered who Caroline really was. In 2007, Neil finally revealed the secret. He wrote Sweet Caroline after seeing a photo of a young Caroline Kennedy in her riding outfit next to her pony. At the time, he was a broke dreamer, just looking for a spark. That innocent image gave him one, and a reason to keep writing. Neil Diamond wrote Sweet Caroline in less than an hour, holed up in a Memphis hotel room. Years later, he told the story at Caroline Kennedy's 50th birthday party, and suddenly, the song took on new meaning. What began as a moment of inspiration became a cultural treasure. Over the years, Sweet Caroline found a second life, one that Neil never could have predicted. It became the unofficial anthem of the Boston Red Sox, blaring through Fenway Park at every home game, uniting generations with its infectious chorus. Even decades later, Neil was in awe. The song that started as a flicker of hope kept lighting up new hearts, again and again. By 1968, his life was transforming, too. He signed with Uni Records, and that decision changed everything. At Columbia, his songs had been critically praised, but commercially underwhelming. Uni gave him the backing and freedom to be himself. And for the first time, the hits weren't just critically appreciated, they were golden, literally. His first gold records arrived, and people stopped seeing him as just a songwriter. Neil Diamond had become a performer in full command of his craft. Around the same time, he helped introduce a young British talent named Elton John to American audiences, opening doors for a legend while continuing to build his own. Meanwhile, Neil's own songs were growing richer, deeper, more personal. His concerts had evolved into dramatic, soul-stirring experiences. In 1970, Cracklin' Rosie hit #1, and it was a defining moment. After all the empty rooms, half-eaten meals, and rejected demos, he finally had his breakout. Cracklin' Rosie had it all: a catchy hook, emotional depth, and a sound that stuck. It was the sound of someone who'd earned every note. No more doubts. Neil Diamond had arrived, and he wasn't done. In 1972, Song Sung Blue became his next #1 hit. Simple, heartfelt, and full of humanity, it captured what fans loved most about Neil: honesty wrapped in melody. That summer, he recorded Hot August Night during a legendary run of 10 sold-out shows at the Greek Theatre in Los Angeles. The double live album wasn't just a concert recording, it was a declaration. Hot August Night captured Neil at his peak: raw energy, deep emotion, and an electric bond with the crowd. It didn't just mark a high point, it created a legacy. So iconic, he'd returned to that night again and again with follow-up albums in 1987, 2009, and 2018. But nothing ever quite touched the lightning of that original show. Later that same year, Neil took another bold step. He became the first major pop rock star since Al Jolson to headline Broadway's Winter Garden Theatre. For 20 nights straight, the house was packed. The audience was a mix of young couples, silver-haired fans, businessmen, and cool kids who quietly adored his music. It was a daring move, but it worked. Neil proved he could bring magic to any stage, anywhere. Then, at the height of his fame, Neil did something almost unheard of. He walked away. He stopped touring for more than 3 years. While other stars clung to the limelight, Neil chose time with family, space to write, and room to breathe. Critics wondered if fans would still be there when he returned. They were, and in record-breaking numbers. His 1976 comeback tour shattered attendance records in North America, Europe, and Australia, pulling in over $5 million, an astronomical figure at the time. His shows were bigger, his music more profound, and the connection with his audience had only deepened. And still, he wasn't done taking chances. In 1973, Neil signed a deal with Columbia Records that sent shockwaves through the music world: 5 albums for $5 million, an eye-popping sum back then. With that freedom, he took a creative leap. He composed the soundtrack for Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, a poetic story about a seagull chasing transcendence. The film flopped, but Neil's music didn't. The soundtrack was lush, emotional, and unlike anything he'd done before. It wasn't designed to top pop charts, it was a statement. Neil Diamond was chasing something higher than hits. The film may have flopped, but Neil Diamond's music soared. Jonathan Livingston's Seagull's soundtrack sold millions, won a Grammy, and even earned him a Golden Globe. But behind the scenes, it was anything but smooth sailing. Diamond clashed bitterly with the film's director over creative control, furious that his music was being cut and altered without his permission. The experience left scars. He vowed never to work on a film again, unless he had complete control. That promise held until 1980. In 1980, Neil took the biggest leap of his life. He stepped in front of the camera. With zero acting experience, he starred in The Jazz Singer, a modern remake of the iconic 1927 film. Despite the gamble, Hollywood offered him $3.5 million, the highest fee ever paid to a first-time actor at the time. He played Yusul Rabinovich, a Jewish cantor torn between tradition and a dream of becoming a pop star. Acting alongside legends like Sir Laurence Olivier and Lucy Arnaz, Neil surprised everyone by holding his own, with real chemistry on screen. The film was a commercial hit, tripling its production budget. But the critics were not kind, especially about Diamond's acting. What the critics couldn't deny, though, was the music. The soundtrack was a phenomenon. Songs like Love on the Rocks, Hello Again, and America became instant classics. Controversy sparked over a scene where Diamond performed in blackface, a nod to the original film's era. It was uncomfortable, but historically rooted. After the experience, Neil made a quiet decision. Acting wasn't his path. Apart from cameo appearances, like in the comedy Saving Silverman, Neil stayed behind the mic. Music, after all, was where his heart lived. Among the standout tracks from the jazz singer was America, a song that quickly grew beyond the film. Inspired by his family's immigrant story, Neil wrote it straight from the soul. His grandparents had come to Brooklyn from Russia and Poland. This song was, as he put it, my gift to them. America carried hope, but also heartbreak. Listeners felt the depth. It reached number 8 on the Billboard charts and carved itself into the fabric of American life. Years later, in the 2000s, it became an anthem for Latino immigration rallies. Neil was stunned and proud. It's the song for the modern-day Latino, too, he said, amazed at how far it had traveled. Long before the fame, Neil's own journey had begun quietly. At 22, while working as a waiter in the Catskills to chase his music dreams, he met Jay Posner. Their connection was immediate. They married in 1963, before anyone knew his name. While Neil fought for his big break, Jay supported him as a schoolteacher. Together, they had 2 daughters, Marjorie and Ellen. But when Neil's star began to rise in the late 60s, their marriage began to fall apart. By 1967, they separated. By 1969, it was over. It was a bittersweet chapter, career success at the cost of personal loss. Later that year, he married again. This time to Marcia Murphy, a TV production assistant. Rumors swirled that their relationship had started before his divorce. Regardless, they built a life together, raising 2 sons, Jesse and Micah. For a while, it looked like Neil had found balance. But the road called, and the grind of fame took its toll. After 25 years, they divorced in 1995. Headlines exploded with reports of a $150 million settlement, half his fortune. Neil later said that number was inflated, but didn't complain. She got enough to live on for the rest of her life, he said. She was worth every penny. Instead of therapy, Neil turned to music. He poured his feelings into Tennessee Moon, an album that helped him process and heal. Then, something unexpected. In 1996, during a tour stop in Brisbane, Australia, Neil met Ray Farley. Their connection was quiet but deep. The relationship lasted 12 years. Ray took on managing his merchandise business. But their love was tested when Ray endured a failed back surgery and debilitating pain. Neil stayed close, writing the songs for Home Before Dark during that emotionally heavy year. That music, filled with sorrow and devotion, bled directly from his experience. Yet, without fanfare, the relationship ended quietly before 2008. No scandal, no headlines. Just silence. Then, love surprised him again. In 2009, while filming a concert documentary, Neil met Katie McNeil, a sharp, much younger music executive. The age gap was nearly 30 years, but the connection was real. In 2011, at 70, Neil used his very first tweet to announce their engagement. They married the following year in a small Los Angeles ceremony. This time, Neil said he didn't want to end his life alone. Katie got it. She understood the journey, the fame, the pressure, the music. Katie eventually became his manager too, and stood by him through the hardest news of all. In 2018, Neil was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. After 50 incredible years on tour, he retired from the stage. But even as life changed, the music didn't stop. In 2005, before his diagnosis, Neil had already started a powerful new chapter, teaming up with producer Rick Rubin for the album 12 Songs. In 2005, Neil Diamond returned to his raw, emotional roots with 12 Songs, an album that surprised everyone by debuting at number 4 on the Billboard charts. Producer Rick Rubin helped Neil strip back his sound, bringing new energy to both his recordings and live performances. Neil's music kept reaching new audiences in unexpected ways. His song Red Red Wine became a global hit thanks to UB40's reggae cover, and tracks like Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon and Solitary Man found fresh life through covers by other artists. In 2011, Neil was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, celebrating his lasting impact. Then, in 2018, Neil announced he had Parkinson's disease and would retire from touring, ending a 50-year career on the road. Though devastated, he promised to keep writing and recording. At first, he denied the diagnosis, but by 2023, he found peace with himself and his journey. In late 2022, A Beautiful Noise, a Broadway show about his life and struggles, opened to great acclaim. Neil even surprised fans by appearing to lead Sweet Caroline on opening night, a song that had become an anthem for generations and sports fans alike. Despite retiring from live shows, Neil kept connecting with audiences, performing at Red Sox games, charity events, and even making a pandemic version of Sweet Caroline to lift spirits. Neil Diamond's music continues to touch hearts worldwide, a testament to his timeless gift and resilience.